Long ago, nights were truly dark. In the late 1800s, the sun went down and the world turned black. People used candles or dangerous gas lamps that smelled of smoke. The streets of New York were dim and filled with long shadows. Life simply stopped when the light faded. But in the mind of a young immigrant, a different kind of world was already shining bright and clear. City life was difficult back then. To walk home after sunset was to move through a thick, heavy gloom. The gas lamps flickered and often went out. They were expensive to keep and caused many fires. People wanted something better, something cleaner. They wanted a way to bring the power of the sun into their homes. However, nobody knew how to make that dream come true for everyone. Safety was a constant worry for families. If a lamp fell over, a whole house could burn in minutes. The air in many cities was thick with the smell of burning oil and coal. It was a time of great industry, but it was also a time of great limitation. People were waiting for a miracle of science to change how they lived and how they worked after dark. Across the ocean, in a small village, a boy was watching a storm. His name was Nikola Tesla. He watched the lightning and wondered about the power of nature. He was not like other children. He saw math and patterns in the air. He believed that the energy in the sky could be captured. This was not just a child's dream, it was the beginning of a lifelong mission. In 1884, Tesla arrived at the docks of New York City. He had 4 cents in his pocket and a book of poetry. He also had a very important letter in his hand. He looked at the tall buildings and the busy people. He was a stranger in a new land, but he possessed a secret. He knew how to change the way the entire world functioned through the power of electricity. As we follow Tesla's journey from poverty to greatness, I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Please share your city or country in the comments below. If you enjoy these stories of human struggle and triumph, remember to subscribe. Your support helps us share more of these important moments from history with people all around the world. The letter Tesla carried was for a very famous man. It was addressed to Thomas Edison. Edison was already a legend, known as the greatest inventor in America. The letter said that Tesla was a genius who could match Edison's own mind. With hope in his heart, the young immigrant walked toward the laboratory of the most powerful man in the world of science. It was a meeting of 2 giants. New York was a noisy, crowded place. Horses filled the streets and smoke filled the sky. Tesla walked past expensive shops and poor neighborhoods. He saw the potential for beauty everywhere. He saw how electricity could make the city cleaner and safer. He was not looking for wealth or fame yet. He only wanted a chance to show what his mind could do for humanity. Tesla had a unique way of working. He did not need to draw his inventions on paper. He could see the machines in his head. He could watch them run and fix their problems before he ever touched a piece of metal. This made him faster and more efficient than almost any other engineer. It was a gift that would both help him and make others feel very uncomfortable. The stage was now set for a major change in history. A brilliant immigrant had met a famous businessman. They both wanted to light the world, but they had very different ideas about how to do it. This was the start of a friendship that would soon turn into a bitter war. This conflict would decide which technology would power the 20th century and beyond. Thomas Edison worked in a place called Menlo Park. He was called the Wizard because he seemed to make magic happen. He was a practical man who believed in hard work and many trials. He did not care about beautiful math. He cared about what worked and what sold. His laboratory was a factory of ideas where he managed many workers to build his dreams. Edison had already created a system for electric light. It was called direct current, or DC. It worked well for small areas, but it had a major problem. It could only travel a short distance. If you lived more than a mile away from the power station, the light would be very dim. This meant that every few blocks, a noisy and dirty power station had to be built. Direct current flows in only one direction, like water in a pipe. Because of this, it loses its strength very quickly as it moves through wires. Edison had invested a lot of money and time into this system. To him, it was the only way. He was a master of his craft, but he was also a man who did not like to be told he was wrong about his own work. Tesla, on the other hand, saw a better way. He had spent years thinking about alternating current, or AC. In this system, the electricity changes direction many times every second. This allows the power to travel hundreds of miles without losing its strength. It was a more complex idea, but it was much more powerful. To Tesla, it was the only logical choice for a growing world. Imagine a city where every street corner has a small, burning power plant. That was Edison's vision for DC. It was expensive and difficult to maintain. Tesla knew that a single large plant could power an entire state if they used AC. This was a direct threat to Edison's business model. The tension between the two men began to grow from the very first week they worked together. Edison was a man of the earth, while Tesla was a man of the clouds. Edison focused on the cost of copper wires and the price of glass. Tesla focused on the invisible waves of energy that moved through the universe. They spoke different languages of science. One looked at the ground and the dollar, while the other looked at the stars and the future of all people. Despite their differences, Edison hired Tesla. He saw that the young man was incredibly talented. He gave Tesla the most difficult jobs in the shop. Tesla worked long hours, often through the night, to fix Edison's broken machines. He was dedicated and silent, proving his worth with every successful repair. He believed that his hard work would eventually lead to a great partnership. Tesla's mind was always moving. Even while he was fixing old DC motors, he was designing new AC systems in his head. He tried to explain the beauty of his ideas to Edison. But Edison would not listen. He told Tesla that alternating current was a waste of time and far too dangerous. This refusal to listen was the first crack in their relationship. Their first real meeting of minds was tense. Edison was loud and full of stories. Tesla was quiet, formal, and spoke with a thick accent. They were like fire and ice. Edison valued grit and persistence, while Tesla valued elegance and theory. They were both correct in their own ways, but there was no room in one laboratory for two such powerful and different personalities. Business was always on Edison's mind. He knew that the person who controlled the lights would control the future of the American economy. He wanted to protect his patents and his wealth. Tesla, however, was a dreamer. He wanted to solve the problems of the world, even if it meant he did not get rich. This fundamental difference in their values made a conflict inevitable. The practical nature of Edison made him a hero to the public. He was the man who gave them the light bulb. He was a symbol of American success. Tesla was still an unknown immigrant working in a basement. He was brilliant, but he had no power and no money. He had to wait for the right moment to show the world what he could truly do. We often think of science as a cold search for truth. But history shows us that it is actually filled with human emotion and pride. The clash between Edison and Tesla was not just about wires and volts. It was about who would lead the world into the future. It was about the ego of a master and the vision of a student who had outgrown him. One day, Edison gave Tesla a very difficult task. He asked him to improve his existing DC generators. He told Tesla that if he could make them more efficient, he would pay him $50,000. This was a massive amount of money at the time. To Tesla, it was a chance to finally fund his own research and build his own laboratory. Tesla worked for months without rest. He redesigned the machines from the ground up. He used his unique mental modeling to find every flaw. He worked so hard that his health began to suffer, but he did not stop. He believed in the promise of his employer. He believed that his brilliance was finally being recognized and rewarded by the great Thomas Edison. The improvements were a total success. The new machines worked better than anyone had expected. Tesla had saved Edison's company a fortune in materials and energy. He went to Edison's office with pride, ready to receive the money he had been promised. He thought this would be the beginning of his true career as an independent inventor and a leader in science. When Tesla asked for the money, Edison simply laughed at him. He looked at the young man and said that he did not understand American humor. He never intended to pay the $50,000. It was a cruel trick played on a hard-working immigrant. Tesla was shocked. He was a man of his word, and he could not believe a great scientist would lie so easily. Tesla was offered a small raise in his weekly pay instead. For him, it was not about the money itself, it was about the lack of respect. He felt that his honor had been insulted. He was a man who valued truth above all else. Without saying much, Tesla picked up his hat and walked out of the laboratory. He resigned on the spot, leaving everything behind. Suddenly, the man who could see the future was walking the streets of New York with nothing. He had no job, no money, and no powerful friends. Winter was coming and the city was cold. He had to find a way to survive. The brilliant engineer was forced to take the only work he could find. He became a laborer, digging ditches in the frozen ground. Every day, Tesla used a shovel to dig long lines in the earth. He was digging the paths for Edison's DC wires. It was a heavy irony. The man who knew how to power the whole world was now digging holes for a system he knew was failing. His hands were blistered and his back was sore. But even in the dirt, his mind was still working. The physical pain of the work was nothing compared to the pain of his wasted potential. He watched other men work around him, men who did not understand the laws of physics. They saw a ditch digger. They did not see the man who would one day capture the power of a waterfall. This period of his life was a test of his spirit and his resilience. Persistence is a quiet strength. Tesla did not complain. He did not give up on his ideas. He kept his plans for the alternating current motor in his mind, safe and secret. He knew that the world was moving toward a great change, and he was the only one who held the key. He just needed one person to believe in him and give him a chance. This low point in Tesla's life shows us something important about greatness. It is not always found in a clean office or a fancy lab. Sometimes it is found in the mud, holding a shovel, and refusing to stop dreaming. Tesla's time in the ditches was almost over. Soon, a new partner would arrive who would help him change history forever. A man named George Westinghouse heard about the brilliant engineer who was digging ditches. Westinghouse was a successful businessman who had made a fortune with train brakes. He was looking for the next big thing in power. Unlike Edison, Westinghouse was willing to listen to new ideas. He met with Tesla and immediately saw that the young man's AC system was the future. A partnership was born based on mutual respect. Westinghouse bought Tesla's patents for a large sum of money and promised him royalties for every horsepower produced. This finally gave Tesla the resources he needed. He was no longer a servant or a laborer. He was a partner in a massive project to bring light to every corner of the country. The business of AC power began to grow quickly. Westinghouse was a master of manufacturing, and Tesla was the master of design. Together, they started building power plants that could send electricity over long distances. This was the moment the war of currents truly began. Edison saw his monopoly slipping away, and he decided to fight back with everything he had. Edison was terrified of losing his business. He started a massive campaign to convince the public that alternating current was deadly. He claimed that DC was safe like a pet, but AC was a wild animal that would kill you in your sleep. It was one of the first major corporate battles in history. Fear became a powerful tool in the war for the future. The smear campaign was intense. Edison's team traveled from town to town. They held public demonstrations where they used AC electricity to hurt small animals. It was a dark and cruel tactic. They wanted people to be afraid of the wires entering their homes. They wanted the public to believe that Tesla's invention was a weapon of death, not a tool of progress. Newspapers were filled with scary stories. Headlines warned parents about the dangers of the new electricity. Edison even tried to name the new electric chair used in prisons after Westinghouse. He wanted the word for execution to be connected to his rival's technology. It was a very dirty way to do business, but Edison was desperate to protect his wealth. Lies can travel halfway around the world, while the truth is still putting on its shoes. The public was confused and frightened. They saw the great Thomas Edison warning them of danger. Who were they to disagree? Tesla and Westinghouse were facing a mountain of bad publicity. They had to find a way to prove that AC was not only powerful, but also safe for everyone. Public demonstrations were not just for Edison. Tesla also started to show his work. But he did it with beauty instead of fear. He would stand on a stage and let high-frequency current pass through his own body to light a bulb in his hand. He looked like a wizard. He showed the world that electricity could be mastered and used with perfect safety if the engineering was correct. The competition had a dark side that affected everyone involved. Inventors were suing each other in court, and workers were caught in the middle. It was a battle for control over how humanity would live for the next 100 years. But through the noise and the fear, Tesla remained focused on the science. He knew that the truth of physics could not be hidden forever. Tesla's response was always calm and intellectual. He did not like to argue in the newspapers. He believed that the best way to win was to build something so perfect that no one could deny its value. He spent his time in the lab, perfecting the motors and transformers that would make the AC system reliable and efficient. He was playing a long game. Science should be about solving problems, not making money. This was Tesla's core belief. He watched as the two companies fought over every dollar. He saw how the war was slowing down progress. He realized that for his dream to succeed, he might have to make a great personal sacrifice. The future of light was more important to him than his own bank account. The battle for the future was reaching a boiling point. Entire cities were deciding which system to install. If they chose DC, they would be limited to small areas. If they chose AC, they could connect to the whole world. The stakes were incredibly high. One big event was coming that would force the world to finally choose a winner once and for all. A world was watching. Scientists, businessmen, and regular families all waited to see which side would prevail. The war of currents was about more than just electricity. It was about whether the world would be led by the practical inventors of the past or the visionaries of the future. The answer would come in a city built of white light. The year was 1893. The place was Chicago. The event was the World's Columbian Exposition, also known as the World's Fair. This was the biggest event of the century. Nations from all over the world were coming to see the latest achievements of humanity. The organizers wanted the entire fair to be lit by electricity, something that had never been done on such a scale before. Chicago prepared for greatness. They built a magnificent city of white buildings around a lagoon, but they needed a way to light it at night. The bidding war for the contract was the final battleground for Edison and Westinghouse. Whoever won this contract would prove to the world that their system was the right choice for the modern age. There was no room for second place. Edison's company, which was now becoming General Electric, asked for a very high price to light the fair. They believed they were the only ones who could do it. They were confident that the organizers would have no choice but to pay. They wanted to use the fair to cement DC as the standard. It was a move based on power and perceived necessity. Westinghouse and Tesla saw an opportunity. They offered a price that was much lower than Edison's. They were willing to take a huge financial risk just to get the contract. They knew that if they could light the fair, the war of currents would be over. They won the bid, and the pressure was now on Tesla to make it work in front of millions. Lighting the White City was a massive technical challenge. Thousands of light bulbs had to be installed and connected. Huge generators had to be moved to Chicago. Tesla's AC system was put to the ultimate test. If even one thing went wrong, Edison would use it to destroy them. The world was about to see if Tesla's beautiful math could survive the reality of a giant city. The moment arrived. It was opening night, and a massive crowd had gathered. President Grover Cleveland stood ready. He pushed a button, and in an instant, the darkness disappeared. 100,000 light bulbs flickered to life at exactly the same time. The fair was bathed in a brilliant, steady glow that could be seen for miles. It was a miracle of the modern world. Pure light was everywhere. It reflected off the water of the lagoon and illuminated the white statues. People had never seen anything like it. They had lived their whole lives with the dim orange glow of flames. Now, they were standing in a city that looked like it belonged in the future. The beauty was overwhelming, and the message was very clear. Electricity had arrived. The reaction of the crowd was one of pure awe. People cheered, and some even cried. They realized that the world would never be the same. The night had been defeated. Factories could run all night, streets could be safe, and homes could be bright. This was the moment the public finally stopped being afraid of alternating current and began to see its incredible potential. The fair was the final proof that AC worked perfectly. It was more efficient, it was cheaper, and most importantly, it was beautiful. Tesla became a hero overnight. He walked through the fair, a tall and elegant figure, explaining his work to visitors. He had moved from the ditches of New York to the center of the world stage in just a few years. A new era had begun. The success in Chicago showed that electricity was no longer a luxury for the rich. It was a utility for everyone. But Tesla was not finished yet. He had one more dream to fulfill, a dream he had carried since he was a small boy in Croatia. He wanted to capture the power of the most famous waterfall in the world. When Tesla was a young student, he saw a picture of Niagara Falls. He told his uncle that one day he would go to America and put a giant wheel under the falling water to catch its power. People thought he was crazy. How could a man control such a massive force of nature? But Tesla never forgot that childhood dream. It was the North Star of his life. Niagara Falls was a symbol of raw, untamed power. Millions of gallons of water crashed down every minute. For centuries, that energy had just vanished into the air and the spray. Tesla knew that if he could harness that force, he could power the entire northeast of America. It was the ultimate test for his alternating current system. It was the lion he wanted to tame. The power of moving water is constant and clean. Tesla understood that coal and gas would one day run out, but the rivers would keep flowing. He was an early thinker about renewable energy. He wanted to build a system that worked with nature instead of against it. He spent years designing the massive turbines that would sit deep beneath the earth at the edge of the falls. Building the first large-scale hydroelectric plant was a dangerous and expensive task. Workers had to dig deep shafts into the rock. The machinery was the largest ever built. Many people doubted it would work. They thought the power would be lost before it reached the cities. But Tesla was confident. He had already solved the math. Now he just had to wait for the metal to catch up. Technical challenges were everywhere. How do you stop the machines from vibrating apart? How do you insulate the wires against the damp mist of the falls? Tesla worked closely with the engineers, solving problems as they appeared. He was a master of detail. He knew that in a project this big, a single small mistake could cause a disaster that would set science back for decades. The goal was to send power to the city of Buffalo, which was 26 miles away. In the world of direct current, this was impossible. But for Tesla's AC, it was simple. On a dark night in 1896, the switch was thrown. The power of the waterfall was turned into invisible energy. It traveled through the wires and arrived in Buffalo, lighting up the city instantly. Distance was no longer an issue for humanity. This was the moment the modern grid was born. We could now create power in one place and use it hundreds of miles away. It meant that cities didn't need to be near coal mines. They could be anywhere. This changed the geography of the world and how we build our civilizations. It was Tesla's greatest victory. The victory for AC was now total. Even Thomas Edison's own company had to admit they were wrong. General Electric began to use Tesla's patents to build their own systems. The war of currents was over. Tesla had won not by fighting with words, but by building a better world. He had proven that vision and science are stronger than fear and tradition. General Electric eventually dropped Edison's name from many of its projects. The world was moving forward, and it was moving with alternating current. Tesla was at the height of his fame. He was invited to the best parties and featured in every magazine. But he did not care about the fame. He was already thinking about his next idea, something even more ambitious than the last. Tesla's mindset was one of pure persistence. He had gone from a dreamer to a ditch digger to the man who captured Niagara Falls. He showed us that if you believe in a truth, you must hold on to it no matter how many people tell you it is impossible. But the world is often unkind to those who see too far into the future. In his later years, Tesla lived in New York City. He was still a brilliant inventor, but he became more and more isolated. He spent his time in laboratories, working on things that seemed like science fiction. He wanted to send power through the air without any wires at all. He wanted the whole world to have free energy. Many people thought he had finally lost his mind. His wireless dreams were ahead of his time. Today, we use Wi-Fi and radio waves every day. Tesla was the one who first saw that potential. But at the time, nobody would give him the money to finish his work. He became a lonely figure, walking through the city parks. He was a man who had given everything to the world, but the world was moving on without him. Tesla spent much of his time with pigeons. He lived in a series of hotels and often could not pay his bills. He would sit on a park bench and feed the birds, finding more comfort in them than in the businessmen who had used his ideas to get rich. It was a quiet and humble life for a man who had literally lit up the entire planet. His mind was simply too far ahead of everyone else. He was talking about robots, wireless communication, and clean energy decades before they were possible. Because people could not understand him, they began to forget him. He did not mind the solitude. He felt that his work was for a future generation, a people who would finally be ready for his ideas. In January 1943, Tesla died alone in a hotel room. He was 86 years old. He had no wife, no children, and very little money. But the world outside his window was glowing with the light he had created. He died in a city that ran on his thoughts. It was a quiet end for a man whose life had been filled with lightning and thunder. For a long time, Tesla was forgotten by the history books. Children were taught about Edison, but not about the man who actually designed the system we use. It was as if his name had been erased by the companies that grew wealthy from his patents. But you cannot hide a genius forever. Slowly, the world began to remember the master of lightning. The rediscovery of Tesla has been a slow and beautiful process. Modern scientists and engineers look back at his notes and find things he knew 100 years ago that we are just discovering now. He has become a hero for those who value creativity and vision. He is the patron saint of the dreamer and the independent thinker who refuses to follow the crowd. Look around your room right now. Every time you flip a light switch, you are using Tesla's mind. Every time you plug in your phone or turn on your computer, his ghost is there in the wires. He is the invisible architect of our modern life. He did not just invent a machine, he invented the way we live in the world today. Every switch is a tribute to his struggle. Every brightly lit city at night is a monument to his courage. Tesla showed us that one person, even an immigrant with 4 cents in his pocket, can change the course of history. He taught us that the most powerful thing in the universe is not electricity, but the human imagination and the will to help others. Nikola Tesla was a man who saw the light before it was there. He faced powerful enemies, deep betrayal, and long years of poverty, but he never stopped looking at the stars. Today, his work powers every home, factory, and city on our planet. He reminds us that a single idea, held with enough heart, can truly change the world. His light will never fade.